Coordinated, Episode 305, Teammates, Art and Design Exhibit. Greetings, AP Coordinators. I'm Karli Suge, School Counselor and AP Coordinator. Thanks for joining us. It's Monday, December 8th, 2025. Today, we are tapping into our creative side for this conversation with our College Board teammate, Rebecca Stone-Danahy, Director, AP Art and Design, Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. Rebecca is here today to give us a behind-the-scenes look at how our students' artwork takes center stage at the Art and Design exhibit. It's time to do this. Let's go, AP Coordinators. It's time to get coordinated. Good morning, Rebecca. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Good morning, Karli. Thanks so much for having me.
So, Rebecca, I am so excited to hear more about the AP Art and Design exhibit and learn more about your role at College Board. First, though, I'd love to get to know you a little bit more. Can you share how you got started in your career or what drew you to art specifically?
Yes, I can tell you that in kindergarten, I declared that I would be an artist because I could color lines together without leaving white spaces. And I thought that I was amazing. So I knew then that it was going to happen. I'm from a rural public school in the middle of Ohio. And I went to a school where there was only one art teacher for K through 12 students. So I didn't always have art every year. But I took what I could, and sometimes in high school I was able to take those electives, and it turned out that I loved them. I felt like I was good at all the assignments. And in high school, I was also a swimmer. I coached swimming, and I taught swim lessons. And so for me at that time, it seemed like a natural fit to go into education. My parents both taught early in their careers, and so I was definitely encouraged to do that. What I love to tell people, though, is that I went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, where I had professors who were second generation Victor Lowenfeld students. And I didn't know anything about art education. I just knew that I liked art and I wanted to be an art teacher. And that was it. So I learned a lot at that time. And I learned that Lowenfeld was an art education leader who came to the United States post World War II. And he changed how we think about art education. So rather than teaching perfect techniques where students all had to draw the same thing and do it the same way, Lowenfeld was teaching that students are the creative inquiry, that they should have their own ideas, be supported in that, and that it's about process over product. And that really set me up for my teaching career because I was able to host student centered classrooms where students had a choice of what they wanted to do. And I encouraged them to practice, experiment, and revise, which is what we do in AP Art and Design. So I feel so fortunate to have that background.
Yeah, I'm as someone who is not in the art space as a high school counselor, it is really interesting to hear kind of that process over product and kind of to hear that students can kind of tailor it to what their interests are and kind of grow from there. So I know, Rebecca, that a lot of current and former AP teachers listen to our podcast. So as a shout out to them, what was your favorite part about teaching AP Art and Design before moving to College Board?
Well, first of all, AP Art and Design changed how I taught everything. I had been teaching middle school and I moved to high school. In my first year of teaching high school, I was also teaching AP Art and Design. And I loved the rigor and demands it placed on me as a teacher to equal a college level foundations course. I also knew that I really needed to get it together as an artist because my students were going to surpass me. I wasn't keeping up with my own skill set. And I was teaching really talented students who, had been studying art for throughout their career and had a lot of advantages. So at that time, I lived in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I ended up renting studio space downtown. And I encouraged my students to be a big part of my studio practice. I held events and art shows there, and there was just a constant back and forth between my work and what my students were doing. And that time of my life was so rewarding, just personally and professionally. Not only was I creating art, but I was doing it alongside my students. We were showing our work together. And I just loved the relationships that I built with the students, their families, and the community. And so I would have never done that had I not started teaching AP Art and Design.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to kind of connect the school, the students, and the community all together in a way that students can like, express their creativity. And I'm going to talk about myself for a second here, Rebecca. I feel like I am not an artistic person at all. Like I really struggle with like basic stick figures or anything my 3-year-old son requests from me. But my husband, on the other hand, is a graphic designer and he can draw most things just by looking at them, which is wild to me. And obviously, my 3-year-old would choose to have dad draw something for him. So, my question is art a, you get it or you don't kind of subject? And how do you think teachers, AP teachers, can motivate students who don't feel that naturally artistic?
Well, first of all, Carly, I hear this a lot. While there are definitely students who are gifted and talented in the arts, such as your husband, art making is a skill that can be learned just like sports, reading, writing, math, or any other topic. And the beauty of
Mm,
AP Art and Design is that the course is predicated on student inquiry. So I've taught plenty of
mm,
students who maybe didn't have access to art or didn't have the skill set, but they liked it. They liked my class. They wanted to keep
mhm,
taking art. And they were able to pass AP Art and Design because they developed an inquiry that was interesting to them. They were engaged and motivated to learn more, and they persisted for a year or sometimes throughout their high school career. Some of those
mm,
students have since gone on into careers in the arts, and that supports their interests and skills. So if we think about learning as a process, students who are not as naturally gifted can be
mm,
rewarded for thinking and learning through an inquiry that seeks, searches, and discovers. And teaching
mm,
students how to creatively and critically think and reflect is one of the greatest gifts we can impart to any student.
mhm. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. I feel more inspired already. I feel like I could do it. Well,
You
rolling
can.
with that topic, thinking back to your time in teaching, Rebecca, do you have a memorable student aha moment that kind of sticks with you?
Oh, yes. Very early in my career, I had a student who came to me with no art background, and he was a senior. His mom wanted him to be in AP Art and Design,
Mhm,
and he had been tutored by his aunt. So I know art teachers out there are probably cringing right now just hearing that. I
mhm,
was extremely reluctant to have him as a student. I was new to teaching AP Art and Design. He was new to art. And I just didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't have confidence in myself, let alone have confidence in this student.
mhm,
So I did end up accepting the student into the class, and I told him that he would just have to work really hard if he wanted to pass the class, pass the AP Art and
mhm,
Design exam. It ended up that that student, was not the most talented student in my class. I had some really talented students that year, but he showed up every day ready to learn and he persisted through his failures. He
mm,
ended up pursuing an inquiry about the human form and weightlifting because he was also an athlete. He
mhm.
studied physiology. He brought anatomy textbooks into my classroom. And more than once, I found him in my storage closet with his shirt off doing self portrait work in front of a full length mirror. He ended up scoring a 5 on his portfolio, and it
Wow.
taught me a very valuable lesson that I should never turn a student away from my course.
Mhm.
AP Art and Design does not have a prerequisite, and I'm a firm believer of giving students opportunities for rigorous learning because the glow of their success and the memories of that outweighs any failures.
That is such a cool story. Thank you so much for sharing that. As a counselor, I think that's really important for me to take in mind, as well as anyone listening who is in charge of scheduling students, to think about if a student wants to try it and the teacher's willing to support them, they should be given that opportunity because we never know what artistic talents are hiding in there until they go through the process of learning. So thank you so much for giving him that space to explore and for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
And so Rebecca, how did you eventually transition from teaching to working at College Board?
Well, so it was kind of a journey. After 21 years of teaching, at that point, I'd also worked various school administrative jobs. And I decided that I wanted to be a school principal. So I went back to school for a second master's degree in secondary administration at the Citadel in South Carolina. And while I was taking classes for the master's degree, I found out that they had a specialist in education leadership degree in school superintendency. So I decided that I would just go straight through and do that. And while I was in those classes, I learned that the Citadel had developed a relationship with Clemson, also in South Carolina, for a new degree program called Education Systems Improvement Science. And the degree program was started to raise student achievement in South Carolina. So it sounded very interesting, and it was something that I thought that I would want to do and it would easily apply to my career. So I decided to just go for it and stay in school because I also knew if I quit classes, I would never go back.
Right.
And so through all of this, I was teaching and I was applying for school principal, assistant school principal positions and district jobs. And then the College Board job opened up and I applied for it and landed the job. And I'm so glad that I did. I like to tell people now that I'm the school principal for AP Art and Design.
Mhm. That is such a cool journey. And it sounds like there is so much that happens in the world of AP art and design. So, like you said, being the quote unquote principal of AP art and design, can you explain to us what that role is? It sounds like a lot to take on. So, what are some of the main things that you're responsible for?
Yeah, thanks. So, with AP Art and Design, I oversee curriculum and instruction and assessment. And this applies to everything from our course and exam description to instruction, that might happen through our AP Art and Design consultants or our online teaching community. And then assessment, which happens at our AP Art and Design exam reading, which occurs every June. So last year at that AP Art and Design reading, we scored over 82,000 student portfolios and there were
Oh
over
my gosh.
400 readers. So it's a really big thing that happens.
Hmm.
And unless you're involved with it, it's hard to imagine the scope of work. So I plan for that year round. And then my work for the reading really begins in about the second week in May and extends through mid June. So I have this very hands on time where I'm working with people directly and
Hmm.
working with student portfolios. And then once that is over, then I oversee assets that teachers use, like our student samples that are posted to AP Central, reviewing any plagiarism that occurred during the reading, and part of the exhibit. That work happens post reading as part of that curation process, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. And then
Hmm.
communicating any updates to AP Art and Design teachers so that they can plan for the upcoming year. So it's a long unfolding process throughout the year of many pieces and components that make this program happen.
That sounds so relatable in terms of I'm sure there's many AP coordinators that are thinking to themselves, like, yeah, that sounds like my year in a way, of taking on this program that you're in charge of all year long. And then that big push of those that May for us, those AP testing weeks, and then kind of still settling in. So thank you for sharing all of that. That is so much to think about and so much to do. So thank you for all you're doing to support our AP teachers and students and us AP coordinators. So, yes, I do want to talk about the AP Art and Design exhibit, and I'd love to ask you a couple questions about that. Do you mind sharing a bit of background on just what it is and how it came to be?
Sure. So the AP Art and Design exhibit used to be physical. It was an
Hmm.
exhibit that where we framed student artwork and it traveled to universities or colleges,
Oh.
sometimes private schools. I know I saw it a couple times at the National Art Education Association convention, and so it would have the opportunities to be seen where we would have select student works, and then it would just go back to a warehouse in between times. So it wasn't viewable at all times. And I would say, we had 500 to maybe 1,500 people that got to see the exhibit throughout the
Mhm.
year. Then the pandemic happened. There was no way during the pandemic that we were going to have a physical exhibit. So I pitched
Mhm.
the idea that we could make the exhibit virtual And I based it on how I used to run senior night for my AP Art and Design students.
Hmm.
And the students would submit PowerPoints, we'd play music, they would read their art statement, and we would just have this big celebration. So I thought I had this idea for what we could do to showcase student work, showcase not just one piece, but maybe their process works that supported how they got there, much like I did in senior night. So I
Mhm.
found a vendor that was willing to work with me and kind of hear my idea. Because at that time, if you look at exhibits, you only saw finished artworks and you might be able to like virtually walk through exhibit, but you would only see physical artworks hanging on or digital artworks hanging on a digital wall, or you would just see virtually like a PowerPoint of the best student art. So,
Mhm.
but I wanted more than that. So this vendor took all my creative ideas and we developed the AP Art and Design exhibit. As part of that exhibit, as I said, we showcase student process work. We're showcasing their thinking that leads into their art making, as well as their inquiry. And students are encouraged to write statements to support how they created art during the year for AP Art and Design. As part of the exhibit now on the students page, AP Art and Design teachers are asked to write statements about how they support students in their AP Art and Design program. And then school leaders are also invited to write statements about how they support AP Art and Design in the total school program. So it's really a teaching tool where
Mhm.
students are talking to students, teachers are talking to teachers, school leaders are talking to other school leaders, but it's also an advocacy tool intentionally designed to support AP Art and Design and help grow the program. And I say intentional because that's always my goal. My wish is that all students have access to AP Art and Design and that teachers feel confident teaching it.
Right. Wow. I didn't know that the art and design exhibit used to be physical. That now moving to digital, students have a way bigger reach and it's a lot more people have the opportunity to view it. So that's really incredible. What a cool way for them to get their art out into the world. So speaking of those students' artwork, I've always been curious about this. How are students selected to be published to the art and design exhibit?
Yeah. So, when it was a physical exhibit, we curated that work at the AP Art and Design reading, and we continue to do the same in the new digital exhibit. So, we have college professors and high school teachers that work together, and they're looking at student work and looking at the stories that are emerging from that particular exam assessment. So like for this year in 2025, we were looking for really what happened during 2024 and early 2025 that impacted students just socially, culturally, political, and what are students saying? And then as part of that, we're always looking for innovation of materials, processes, and ideas, and just, cool things that students are doing. And then, of course, just high levels exemplar work because we're amazed every year. I think it can't get better. And every year, students blow me away with what they're
Mhm.
submitting. So it's a really fun process. So we look for, you're always looking for high scoring portfolios, but sometimes it's a portfolio where a rater maybe gave it, a low score, another reader gave it a high score. And it's because the student is doing something completely new and innovative,
Mm. Mhm.
and so that's a portfolio worth diving into. And more than once, portfolios like that have gotten into the exhibit because the student is just being so phenomenally creative. Um, so once the reading is over, the curators, probably give me between 70 and 80 portfolios and student artworks that they're recommending. And then I take a look at all of that. And then it's my job to get it down to basically 51 students. So we're looking at 17 portfolios or 17 students per portfolio for 2D, 3D, and drawing. And that is so hard, Carly, because
I bet.
I so want every student to be recognized for the amazing work that they're doing. But, we can't publish them all. And so we eventually whittle it down and then we get started on building the exhibit.
Yeah, I don't envy that position,
Ah,
Rebecca, to be able to go through and kind of select from such a huge number of students. I mean, it's amazing, and I am so appreciative that you all are doing that. So, how are schools notified if one of their students are chosen?
so it's actually my favorite time of the year because I get to personally email students,
Oh,
teachers, and school leaders to
so
congratulate
cool.
them. This year, I estimated I sent over 800 emails where, I'm contacting them, I'm answering questions, it's a lot of back and forth.
Wow.
But I love it because as a
Mhm.
former teacher, I feel connected to the students. I just feel like I can celebrate them. I'm
Mhm.
celebrating, peers, colleagues who are teaching AP Art and Design in the field for the amazing work that they're doing. And I'm celebrating school leaders who are supporting AP Art and Design programs in their schools. So it's such a feel good opportunity for me that I never mind the work that goes into that.
Yeah, and celebrating students is such a wonderful part of our job that we get to do. AP coordinators love celebrating student successes, and being selected to be in the AP Art and Design exhibit is a huge honor. Like there's so much work that goes into every student's portfolio. Like you said, sometimes years of work and tons of hours, and I can't imagine how hard it is to select from those 82,000 portfolios down to the ones that get published. And I know, at my school, the AP Art and Design program is consistently growing. It's always seems to be getting bigger every single year. And I would be certain that that's the case worldwide.
It is. The program was started in 1972. And at that time, about 4,000 students submitted portfolios, and the readers didn't have tables. So they laid artworks out on the floor and sat in a circle around it and discussed the artwork, and that's how it was scored. So, we've grown by leaps and bounds since then. And for some of the readers that have been reading a long time, they're just amazed at where we are now. But I'm pleased to say that last year was the first year that we had over 10,000 portfolios submitted in AP 3D art and design.
Mm,
That's typically been our smallest portfolio simply because sculpture was not a big part of an everyday classroom. But that has changed. And I am so proud of the work that AP Art and Design teachers are doing everywhere
mhm,
to support students who want to pursue sculpture in some way. They're realizing they don't have to have expensive, woodworking equipment or jewelry making or a ceramic studio, that students can do sculpture in a lot of ways. And so I love it that, students who are spatially gifted are
mm.
able to pursue AP Art and Design in ways that they haven't been able to before.
Yeah, that I can see that at my school. Our AP 3D program is growing. Shout out to Miss Ames if you're
Mm.
listening. But yeah, that's such an incredible way that students get to use their high school experience as that growing space to really explore their creativity in classrooms with passionate AP art and design teachers. That is so inspiring, and I'm just so excited to hear about the increase that will happen this year. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing these behind the scenes information for all of our art and design questions. I have been holding on to these questions and I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me, Carly. I can't believe the interview is over already because I could just talk about this all day. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, I do have one more final question for you, Rebecca. So don't head off just yet. What's one thing that you're doing right now for AP coordinators or AP art and design teachers that helps keep you, coordinated?
I think for me, the biggest thing is I wake up excited every day for the service I can do to support AP Art and Design teachers and students. I'll always be a teacher in my heart, and I will always love working with students. And anything that I can do to make that easier and better for everybody is my pleasure. So I just love my job. I love what I do, and I love supporting teachers and students.
Thank you for sharing that. AP coordinators, please take some time to check out the Art and Design exhibit webpage. We'll put a link in the show notes. We know our students are talented, but wow, when you see it displayed like that, it is so inspiring. We might not all be artists, but we are all inspired in our own ways to create, communicate, and innovate our AP systems to keep them well, you know, coordinated. Thanks for joining us today. Abby and I will be back next week with a new episode and a new conversation. I can't wait. We'll talk to you then. and for all our support of AP students. Yep, our support. AP coordinators, we are truly good as gold.
And maybe I just don't know. I'll say it over and over and over again till I believe it's so. I'm good as gold.
Hey, AP coordinators, are you looking for quick answers to those common tasks we do in AP registration and ordering?
Especially some that we only do once a year, which, side note, Karli, for me, that is changing AP art and design portfolio types. I always need reminders about how to do that.
Absolutely, me too. Or would you like to teach your students how to troubleshoot their account login challenges before they come to you?
Mhm. If you answered yes to these questions, have we got the place for you?
The AP Coordinator Experience YouTube channel houses 4 different playlists as well as the Coordinated Podcast.
That's right, Karli, and it's an excellent resource. The playlist that might help us the most is the AP registration and ordering playlist. This features over 10 short videos on how to do everything in AP registration and ordering, from how to create a class section to, my personal favorite, how to switch AP Art and Design exams, to how to switch students to late testing.
Support for AP students includes a video to help students troubleshoot any challenges they have when logging in to their College Board accounts. This is a favorite and a great way to ensure that our students are ready for exams in May.
We also have playlists for coordinators, the back to school workshops, and, cue the excitement, a new playlist coming in January that will really help us out with another big topic. Stay tuned.
Visit the AP Coordinator Experience YouTube channel for all these videos and more.